now cleaned up all the pieces, and we're going to heat up our case. You want these to be hot enough so that if you spit on them, they sizzle, but you want to be careful. Don't get them too hot or they can crack. So, and we just heat that up, and the bearing should just drop in there. Don't burn yourself, and then let that cool off before you work on it some more. Here's just this is just kind of a grease retainer or shield. The later bikes, obviously, they have a seal that goes in there. These early bikes, there's no felt or anything in there. It's just that shield. And then the bearing is shielded on one side, and I guess that's supposed to keep the gear grease inside of the transmission. But I'm not so sure it works all that good. And make sure you get the snap ring in here. And here's your fourth gear. And we did make a new bushing out of a 650 bushing, which we had to shorten, but it'll work in there. So you want to just make sure all your gears slide on your shafts, that you don't have any areas where things are sticky. So we'll put the cam plate in with the shift detent in it, and I put it in there in fourth gear, and that just makes it easier to assemble. Put your lay shaft in a bushing, and then a spacer, and then another bushing on top, and then you got the big sleeve gear that goes on your lay shaft. That puppy goes in there first. Gear end goes down. That's your fourth gear lay shaft. Lube it up a little bit. Just a little bit of engine oil is fine in here. You don't need anything fancy. You don't use anything like STP or anything like that. And then, like I said, when you put this in fourth gear, this gear here goes in and just sits naturally right on top of fourth gear. It isn't suspended in midair or anything like that, and it fits right into the groove in the cam plate, and that sits right in there just real nice, and it'll sit there and it doesn't move around or flop around, and makes it easier to put it together. Now I take the other two gears on the lay shaft, assemble them with the shift fork. Make sure you got the rollers on these, and if you have to put a little grease on the rollers to hold them in place, that's a good idea. Or sometimes they're peened and they just stay there, but I just grease them. Drop that in there. Just make sure that your two shift forks clear one another, and just kind of line everything up. You can see down through the hole. And you slide that up, and it just drops into that groove, and you can see down through the two shift forks and make sure they're more or less lined up. Put your next gear in the stack on the main shaft in there. Line that up inside. Just kind of get it close. Lube up your main shaft. That puppy should just drop right in there. A little bit of wiggling. If it isn't going in there, you got something that isn't lined up, but usually they just drop right in really nice. You see, just like butter. So then we'll put the shift fork shaft in, and just remember you put the small end in first. On the bigger bikes, it's just the end with the little flat milled on it, so that you don't hydraulic lock, and you want that thing to go down in that hole all the way. Sometimes they're slippery, so a rag helps to get it down in there. And the last thing is just put your first gear in your lay shaft, a little bit of lube in there, and that's basically it. You put the top cover on, and when I put them together, I leave them in fourth, and take the shifter quadrant, and with it at the top of the case, it wants to touch all the way at the top of the case, and then when you drop it in, that'll be in fourth gear. And then shift it down into neutral and check this alignment between these two bushings and the two shafts. There, a straight edge should line up with that bottom little dog right there. If that's in line with the transmission in neutral, you got your transmission timed properly. And then I just seal it up and put a couple of temporary nuts on the studs just to make sure it seals up, and while you're fiddling around with the cover and getting the cover on. So it should go right down the center of both of them, all three of them. And here I just check the lay shaft in play. There should be a little bit in here. It shouldn't be too tight. And that's it for this time. We'll see you next time.